Welcome to the Luke Macias Show. I am recording this on a Sunday evening because I wanted to get y'all a quick emergency episode on a couple last-minute things that are going on in the legislature. There are 3 bills that everyone is watching for the Texas Senate to get across the finish line, but more importantly, Jeff Leach added a very troublesome amendment on Senate Bill 12, which will be one of the most consequential conservative victories this session, and we're going to break down what was in that amendment and why it needs to be taken out of the bill. Let's get to the show. I want to give a shout out to Riley, who was willing to take some time out Sunday afternoon to jump on and help me record this episode of the Luke Macias Show. It is Sunday, but there was too much going on, and there are decisions that are going to get made on a 24-hour basis that will already be done by the time I come to you. When I come to you at the next show, everything will have already happened. So I want to give you a couple quick things that you need to be aware of. Very quickly on the Senate side, HB 1056 by Mark DeRazio looks to be moving out of Senate Finance. If it gets out of the Senate, that is a huge gold bullion win. Texas GOP supports that bill. It's been Mark DeRazio's marquee legislation for the last 2 sessions, and there are a lot of other grassroots organizations. Kevin Freeman is a leading voice. Many of you know him statewide in the grassroots, but Kevin has been pushing legislation like this. This is just one step for Texas to take that is really necessary. So HB 1056, HB 3441, which is going to say that if your kid is injured by a vaccine and that pharmaceutical company is advertising all these vaccines, then they are liable. So if you're going to go advertise your vaccine, you better be really sure it's not going to significantly injure someone's child. That's a huge bill by Shelley Luther. It got voted out of HHS. So now it just needs to be brought to the Senate floor. If it's brought to the Senate floor and that thing's voted on, it will pass. And if it does pass, it's going to the governor. And then lastly, Mitch Little's bill, HB 4623. And this is what is going to open up school districts to be held liable for sexual assaults that are happening to children on school campuses. A really, really, really important bill that the school district, that TASB, and all of your teacher unions are flipping out over because they don't want to be responsible. And if you want to know the one thing that would actually change school policies and make these schools clean up the mess that has become the public education system, Texas Scorecard has multiple stories every single week about kids who are being assaulted by their teachers. Put the onus on the school that says if you're going to be negligent in this, you will owe this family $500,000, which is a penny to pay for the sexual assault of a child. But this will remove what they currently have, which is sovereign immunity. If a private school is negligent and a child is sexually assaulted by a teacher, they can be sued, but not a public school. And Mitch Little has a fantastic bill that will finally pierce the veil of sovereign immunity that needs to pass. These are 3 key bills. Most of the really good conservative bills have already passed the Senate, and they're in the House. The one that everyone is looking at very intensely is SB 2880. That is going to save the lives of tens of thousands of children by cracking down on the abortion pills that are getting flown into Texas for women to end the lives of their children. And it is happening to over 50,000 children a year in Texas are dying with the abortion pill. This is an incredibly creative policy that was developed and worked by Texas Right to Life. And Ken King supposedly voted it out of his committee, but is waiting on an attorney at Ledge Council to give him his bill analysis to give to the Calendars Committee. But let me be clear. The excuse for children dying for the next 2 years cannot be there's some unelected bureaucrat at Ledge Council who can't figure out how to write some paperwork so that this thing can be placed on the calendar. So those are some of the things that they're looking at. By the time you're listening to this, a calendar might have already been set. We will see. I will come to you and give you an update on these things. Hopefully, I'm getting to you in a timely manner. But really what I want to focus on today is Senate Bill 12. Now, Senate Bill 12 is one of the most consequential bills, and I believe will be one of the most consequential bills of the session when it does pass and is signed into law by the governor. The governor has indicated support for this bill for a very long time. But something happened. And before I get to the thing that happened, I'll tell you all this. Conservative Republican legislators worked very hard to strengthen SB 12 as much as they could. Brent Money had an excellent amendment. Nate Schatzline had an excellent amendment. Steve Toth had an excellent amendment. There were multiple amendments that strengthened that bill. Alan Schoolcraft had an excellent amendment that got pulled down on a technicality, but that language can still get into the bill. They did strengthen SB 12 from changes that were made. And if you want to know those, I'm just going to very briefly tell you them. Steve Toth offered an amendment that would say that schools can no longer participate in socially transitioning children, where they're literally grooming these children into a transgender ideologue, basic creation. So his amendment said they cannot participate in the social transitioning of these children. Nate Schatzline's amendment was really important because there was this language that got added in the House committee that was not in the Senate, and there's a reason. The Senate said, hey, don't talk to the kid about sexual orientation, gender identity. Don't do it, right? And then it made some exceptions. It said, well, if you need to ask the kid about their general well-being, you can ask that. And if you need to talk to the kid about something that you would report to CPS, you can discuss that. If there's something that you've been told, right? A kid comes up and says, I'm being sexually abused by my parents. At that point, you're talking to the kid about something that needs to be reported to CPS, right? So it gives these protections to say you can in these extreme scenarios. But the House added this little section of family code that talks about a child receiving counseling without their parents' permission if they've been physically, sexually, or emotionally abused. Emotionally abused. And that was the key word. Can you imagine every Beto O'Rourke donating teacher union member who wants to trans the kids what they define as emotional abuse? If this kid says he read the Bible last night, they think he's been emotionally abused, and they can talk to the kid about sex and gender. It's crazy. So Nate Schatzline struck that. Brent Money struck a section that talked about all these plans. So again, this bill says no DEI, no diversity, equity, and inclusion, no racism in your ISD. But again, the House added in this little section that said, except for these district plans that you create to make up the difference between mathematical performance or college readiness. And again, this was a perfect little insertion that would essentially say, hey, if you decide that your black kids go to college a little less than your white kids, you can make a whole DEI plan to fix that. And it's fine to be diversity, equity, and inclusion because it's a plan to make up for college readiness, which essentially would just completely blow the whole thing wide open. That's what it would do. So Brent Money offered that amendment. That got stripped as well. Alan Schoolcraft offered an amendment to get rid of radical sex and gender clubs that are in some of our schools in second grade. Kids can join a sex club. It's insane. He offered an amendment to do that. Democrats fought it. They ended up getting it on technicality because Jeff Leach had already amended part of that in his amendment, which is what we're going to get to. That's the main crux of this emergency episode. So that is a really important thing to still pass. But I want to go to Jeff Leach's layout of his amendment so that everyone can understand what we're dealing with. Let's go to this clip. This is a 4-minute clip of Jeff Leach laying out his amendment. I will pause this a couple times. Let's go.
Chair recognizes Mr. Leach.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I trust that this is on your screen. I don't want to get ahead of you. If it's not, just someone yell at me or wave me down and I'll slow down. Members, this perfecting amendment includes suggestions and feedback from many of you, which I'm very grateful for, not only today, but over the past couple days. Specifically, as you'll note, the definition of classroom instruction on page 1 is further defined. Let me give you a little bit of background on this, members. The state of Florida passed, a few years ago, a bill that was widely debated and hotly contested. And ultimately, a school district under that bill was sued, and the school district and the plaintiffs went to a mediation and ultimately entered into a settlement agreement that clarified some of the provisions of that bill to the satisfaction of both parties, the plaintiffs and the state. What this bill does, what this amendment does, is it tracks the language, not exactly and not word for word, but it certainly tracks the spirit and in many cases the language of that mediated settlement agreement in Florida. I'm happy to take some questions on that if members have those questions. On page 2 of the perfecting amendment, it ensures that relating to DEI policies, if there is a termination of an employee who has violated a school district's DEI prohibitions, that employee must be afforded due process and an opportunity to appeal. I appreciate Representative Cheryl Cole bringing that amendment to me.
Pause there for a second. I just want to point out, and I'm not as concerned about the Cheryl Cole specific part of this amendment saying they have to have due process when they get fired. That always exists, by the way. But I want to point out, and you're going to hear this as a theme, Leach basically starts to admit a lot of these ideas have come from Democrats. Now, here's the question. Do you think these liberal Democrats voted for SB 12 or against it? They all voted against it. Trick question. Well, I don't think they all voted against it. There might have been like 2 or 3 conservative Democrats, but not the ones he's naming, by the way. These are some of the most liberal progressive ones. So he says, thank you, Democrat, for bringing this to me. We're going to dig into some other portions of his amendment and what they did, okay? These were ideas brought to him by Democrats, very liberal Democrats, who want more DEI and more sex and gender theory in schools. So they're not coming to say, hey, there's a loophole where where too much sex, gender theory, and DEI is going to get into schools. We want to help close it. That's what these Democrats are asking, and Leach is offering his own amendment that he's worked with Democrats to do. Let's continue on in this clip.
Representative Romero brought an amendment just a couple hours ago relating to, when we talk about DEI, this amendment on page 2, lines 19 through 22, will protect a school district's ability to engage in the historically underutilized business program for businesses that are owned by a minority group or by women in accordance with state law. Representative Romero, I appreciate you bringing that amendment.
Okay, let's stop there. Representative Romero is one of the most racist and liberal Democrats in the legislature. I want to point that out, okay? Representative Leach says he brought this to me like an hour ago. So again, this is not something that's been vetted. The Republican caucus doesn't know about this language. And by the way, another thing which I'll explain later is you have to understand that in these final days of the legislative session, 60% of the Republicans won't even be on the floor on any given time because they're literally like, somebody will call them and say, this senator has a question about the bill that they're voting out tomorrow and he's the flip vote. So they'll run over to the Senate to talk to a senator and they'll come in because there's a conference committee that's meeting on the China land bill. There's like 80 different things happening. So not everyone's not like when we watch this video, we picture all the conservatives we know and love like sitting down in their seat just watching these people, right? But that is not the case. And so he's explaining this, hindsight's 2020, right? But I want to go to what he's talking about because let's go to that part of his amendment. It's on page 2. It says on page 5, between lines 26 and 27, insert the following appropriately numbered subdivision and renumber subsequent subdivisions and cross-reference to those subdivisions accordingly, and adds this. Limit or prohibit a district from contracting with historically underutilized businesses or businesses owned by members of a minority group or by women in accordance with applicable state law. So let's go to page 5, line 26 and 27 of the bill, because that's where we're putting this in, right? And if we go there, and bear with me for just 1 minute because I'm like literally talking to y'all while I'm looking at my computer screen with both the bill and the amendment and everything else. But if anything, y'all are going to learn a little bit about the legislative process on this episode. Okay. And I'm going to do it a little slower so that you kind of understand. If you are a grassroots person who wants to understand how to do this, you can pull up the amendment. You can go to TextLedge, look up the bill, pull up Leach's amendment, and you can read it and then pull up the actual bill that came out of committee, and you can see what it changes, right? On page 5, between lines 26 and 27. So page 5, lines 26 and 27 says this. Nothing in this section may be construed to. Now, by the way, you might say, what is the section he's talking about? The section he's talking about is the prohibition on diversity, equity, and inclusion duties. So we have a whole prohibition. You can't be racist. You can have diversity, equity, and inclusion policies. But then at the bottom of page 5, it says, nothing in this section may be construed to. So the whole point of this is, it says, hey, you can be racist here. That's what it is saying, okay? And I'm gonna give you an example of what was already in the bill. Limit or prohibit a school district from acknowledging or teaching the significance of a state and federal holiday. And the point of this is, if there is a Black History Month or something like that, that the teacher can teach that. That is what that says, right? The other one says, affect a student's right under the First Amendment of the United States Constitution. So here's what it's saying. This DEI prohibition can't affect a student's First Amendment right to say something. We all agree with that. Limit or prohibit a school district from analyzing school-based causes of taking steps to eliminate unlawful discriminatory practices. Again, if there's an unlawful discriminatory practice, the school can look into that and they can try to address it. Yes. The whole point is a school couldn't say, well, we can't do that because the DEI prohibition. But this is not that.
America is at a crossroads. Now, more than ever, Texas must step up and lead the country. We don't have time to mess around. The only way to save America is with a strong Texas. You and I know this, but so do the enemies of life and liberty. Therefore, you and I have no choice but to stand up and fight. I'm Sarah Gonzalez, and to the enemies of liberty, I say, come and take it.
So what the Romero amendment did, that Leach added as a Leach amendment, is say, hey, you can have DEI policies around who all gets money from the ISD. You can literally say, hey, we're only contracting with Black businesses. We're only contracting with women businesses. We'd prefer you to be a Black woman or an Asian woman. And if you're an Asian woman who happens to be a lesbian, we're definitely hiring you. That literally is now protected by this amendment. Any underutilized group, do you know who the left thinks are underutilized? LGBT minority women. So you basically just set this massive DEI critical race theory, oppressed oppressor pyramid up and say, whoever's been the most oppressed by the definition of this Marxist ideology, you get all the money from the ISD. That's what that section does. It needs to come out. Conservative Republican members cannot offer an amendment to strip that once it's added on, okay? You have to understand, this thing was just gavelled in, and then all the Democrats voted for it, and what he was saying was, all of a sudden, once everybody could actually read the amendment, I talked to several members of the legislature who literally are like reading it multiple amendments later. And so everyone's trying to figure out, what did Leach just do? Typically, when a member has a cleanup amendment, he's not sticking a bunch of DEI and sex and gender theory in his own bill. Okay, that's not what Republicans assume. So when he gets up for his First Amendment, it's by Leach, you just assume, oh, he's just doing some cleanup stuff. And you're not even listening to what he's saying, because you're looking at the Democrat amendments and other Republican amendments, and you're trying to talk to people about the issues. But he does say in his layout, basically, Romero brought me this an hour ago, and I would like more this helps us have DEI contracting practices, so I'm putting that in. Let's continue on.
Relating to clubs, this amendment will further clarify that a parent be provided notice with respect to a student's club membership and participation. On page 2, lines 27 through 31, this is I forget who it was that brought me this amendment, someone out there, relating to clarifications on a school district's ability to implement targeted recruitment initiatives. I believe this is Representative Tallarico. And if you
Ms. Goodwin-Hawkins, for what purpose?
Will the gentleman yield for question?
I will. I promise I'm almost done, Representative. If I could just finish this, because I want to give due weight to each.
Not at this time.
Each provision of the amendment. I'm not trying to waste time. I just think this is important to go through. Representative Tallarico brought me this amendment, which protects a school district's school's ability to recruit. Of course, we in the bill prohibit discriminatory hiring practices that would be classified as unlawful DEI. But if a school wants to go, in order to increase the diversity in their hiring pool, if they want to go out and recruit, let's say it's at a historically black college, or if it's at a convention, if they want to go recruit a specific ethnic group to increase their hiring pool, then they're encouraged and allowed to do so under this provision.
So I want you to understand, James Tallarico is one of the most radical, progressive Marxist legislators in the body. He came to Jeff Leach and said, hey, ISDs can no longer hire you because of the color of your skin. They actually have to look at the content of your character. Crazy idea, by the way. That's what the bill does. So Tallarico says, well, Chairman Leach, can we at least make sure that if an ISD wants to spend money to just target black or brown or yellow or white applicants, they can do that? I say this as a Hispanic man, right? I do not want any ISDs to say, we don't have enough Hispanic applicants to be teachers, so we're going to just go market to Hispanics. And we want every billboard that has a teach here to have a Hispanic, and we want every display ad to be Hispanic, and we want to only target people digitally who are Hispanic. I don't want an ISD to do that. I want an ISD to say, we have 10 teacher positions open, and let people in the community apply to be teachers. And I would like them to hire the person they think is most qualified to teach math. And I want them to hire the person most qualified to teach children how to read. That's what I want them to do. So Tallarico goes and says, hey, Chairman Leach, can we just spend all our marketing dollars on recruiting just certain DEI applicants to the pool? Yes, you may now do that. That needs to get taken out of the bill, by the way.
On the final page on page 3 of 4, this is language on page lines 3 through 7, brought by a few of you, specifically Representative Hinojosa, relating to the commissioner's ability to hold a school district accountable who has been found to retaliate against a student or a parent. The further language, Representative Tallarico also brought a great amendment included on page 3, lines 24 through 26, relating to what classroom instruction, further detailing what classroom instruction is allowed and what's not. As basically what it is anything that's consistent with the essential knowledge and skills developed by the State Board of Education.
I want to stop there because there are two things in the Leach amendment that he skipped in his layout, and I think I know why. Again, guys, I didn't graduate college, so I'm not allowed to be a policy expert, but I know how to read a bill, and let's talk about some things that are on page 3 of his amendment that he didn't talk about. One is page 8, line 8 and 9. It says on page 31, line 25, between on and instruction, insert classroom. So what is page 31 and what is line 25? Let's look. Restriction on instruction regarding sexual orientation and gender identity. Now, this is going to make sense in a second. So what this amendment did is it said they wanted to insert classroom. Get this right. Restriction on classroom instruction regarding sexual orientation and gender identity. Not all instruction, which means there's this real narrowing of it to say it's about classroom instruction on sex and gender identity. Sexual orientation, gender identity. That's what it's about, right? If there happens to be sexual orientation and gender identity in other ways, well, then that's not really going to be a thing that we're trying to stop, which I think is not what Republicans want out of this bill. And if you say, well, Luke, I don't know if that's really what it means, let's go to the next part, which he also skipped, by the way. On page 32, it says strike line 2 and substitute classroom instruction regarding sexual. Strike line 2. Now, by the way, they're very smart about how they drafted this amendment because they didn't say to strike what it says, because it'd be kind of probably more problematic. Here's what line 2 says. In fact, let me just read the section, right? a school district open enrollment charter school or district charter school employee may not provide or allow a third party to provide, and then here's what he's going to strike, instruction, guidance, activities, or programming regarding sexual orientation or gender identity. Instruction, guidance, activities, or programming regarding sexual orientation or gender identity. And he inserts classroom instruction regarding sexual. So the third party and the employee may not provide classroom instruction regarding sexual orientation. So can the ISD provide guidance, activities, and programming about sexual orientation and gender identity? Well, based on his amendment, yeah. And why would you put that in the bill? Why would you say, hey, look, I think what Republicans really don't like is the classroom instruction about sexual orientation and gender identity, but right, all of you concerned parents, you don't have a problem if we've got a bunch of sexual orientation and gender identity guidance in our ISDs, right? Activities, some good gender activities, you're fine with that, just as long as it's not in the classroom instruction, right? What if we have programs designed and we bring third parties in to have programs around sexual orientation, but it's not classroom instruction? Are you okay with that? That is what his amendment did. And he didn't talk about it, by the way, in his layout, his very thorough layout. I just want to make sure people know what this is. Well, you didn't say that. And do you understand that a state representative, this is where I'm going to tell you to give a lot of Republicans some grace on this amendment going in. Guys, even if when he's talking about it, they're trying to listen to him. They're probably trying to have another conversation with somebody about an amendment that's coming up or a bill that's coming up or a senator who they're trying to get to support one of their bills. And the amendments on their screen, which they wouldn't have had access to until he got up. And then they're scrolling through. When they read on this thing on page 32, strike line 2 and substitute classroom instruction regarding sexual, they have no idea what the implications of that is. And Jeff Leach didn't tell them. He didn't say, now guys, we are going to let programming and activities and other things on in the sexual orientation and gender identity ban. He didn't say that. So if he had, a bunch of Republicans would have lined up and gone, wait, what does your amendment do? Okay, let's go back.
And on the final page, this is further language relating to requirements for student clubs. Mr. Speaker, thank you for allowing me the opportunity to go through all that. I'm happy to take questions, and I move adoption of the amendment.
Okay. So here's what you need to know. This amendment passed. All the Democrats voted for it. They were very excited about it. The Republicans voted for it because it was Leach offering an amendment on his own deal, and a bunch of things were going on. And then once they recognized it, quickly, conservatives all across the state started working to try to make sure we could get rid of this language. There are major problems in the Leach amendment, and I have gone through them with you here so that you and the rest of the people in Texas can know what's going on, because one of the things that has happened this session, and I can complain about it, you can be frustrated about it, ultimately what we care about is good policy, is that certain bill authors keep watering down policy, like pretty substantially and unnecessarily, watering down bills that you could easily just keep strong and good and Republican. And as Leach points out, which I think is honestly one of the best examples, he's literally recognizing the liberal Marxist Democrats that helped rewrite his bill. If you're going to let them help you rewrite the bill, it's probably going to be to insert more DEI and sexual orientation and gender identity in your bill. So you can't then act like Republicans who are frustrated with this amendment are not behaving rationally, because we don't want the Marxists to have more access to our kids with their radical ideas. So Representative Leach has an opportunity to go to conference and to get rid of all this garbage that got put in his own bill by him. And if he does, Senate Bill 12 will be a great, awesome win for Texas. And if he tries to put his foot down and keep all this stuff in, then he's putting massive loopholes in this law that give left-wing activists more access on how to get to our kids. He's giving them a roadmap on how to get to the kids. He's giving the ISDs a roadmap on how to have more DEI. I want ISDs to hire the business that is best to provide whatever service they're trying to hire. I don't want them to hire based on the skin color or sex of the business owner. That's what Republicans believe. And I hope at some point Chairman Leach is willing to get on board, and it happens this week when this bill goes to conference. There's a lot of other stuff happening, guys. Last but not least, the Texas House is in a very good position to still pass a ban on abortion pills. And right now in Texas, over 50,000 children are killed annually with the abortion pill. So if you care about this issue, you need to know that either Chairman King or Chairman Hunter or Speaker Burrows are going to be responsible for killing this bill, or they are going to pass it. And if they pass it and you are a pro-life Texan, you should be grateful. You should be grateful that the chair of calendars moved. You should be grateful that the speaker supported the bill, grateful that State Affairs was able to get the bill out. But you have to understand that the people you should be most grateful for is a handful of members who actually had a press conference, and we are going to close with the clip of this press conference. I am going to show you a press conference that happened earlier this week by conservative members who got up and said the Texas House of Representatives cannot kill this abortion pill ban. And 30 minutes after they had this press conference, Ken King voted the bill out of committee that he'd been sitting on for weeks. So I hope and pray that we are able to save unborn children this session. And I'm grateful for the members of the legislature that are putting pressure and holding these individuals publicly accountable so that the people of Texas can know that if this bill dies, somebody killed it. But hopefully we're not talking about who killed this bill. Hopefully we're rejoicing in the passage of the bill, just like SB 12. Hopefully we're not talking about how Jeff Leach forced all of this DEI and sexual orientation, gender identity back into schools through his amendment. And instead, we're talking about how that language gets stripped out in conference and we are able to have a strong Senate Bill 12 that we can all be proud of. May God bless you and may God bless Texas.
Here today, there have been a lot of good Republicans that have passed this session, and we're really proud of them. But there's also a lot of conservative Republican bills that have died. And today's the day that we're not going to talk about either of those. We're going to take time later to discuss all of the wins and losses. Today we're going to talk about the remaining opportunities for conservative wins. Right now there's a large number of conservative Senate bills either stuck in State Affairs Committee or in calendars, and State Affairs is chaired by Ken King. If Republicans move swiftly, these bills can pass. We do have time for them. Any Republican bill that's on the 5-yard line today will only fail to become law because Republicans did not allow them to pass. Republicans run the chamber, and we can pass these laws. Texas voters chose the Republican Party to lead the Texas legislature. And the bills we're going to speak about are bills that Republican voters would celebrate as huge wins in Texas. The most important issue for us is protecting innocent human life. So I'd like to invite my friend Mitch Little to talk about the biggest opportunity we have remaining this session, which is HB 2880.
Thank you, Tony. Good morning. I'm really here to talk about one thing, and that is Senate Bill 2880 by Senator Brian Hughes. That bill is currently stuck in State Affairs. The Texas House worked hand in hand in a bipartisan effort to pass the Life of the Mother Act, which was Senate Bill 31. We think that that was a very noble thing to do. But there's a balance to this equation that has to be completed. We need to end the use and distribution of medication abortions in Texas. So the abortion medications that are coming into Texas, most Texans don't really understand. You are 10 times more likely to die from a medication abortion than you are a surgical abortion. Not only that, we have obvious 100% fatality to babies in the state of Texas from these medications. The primary medications that we're addressing are mifepristone and misoprostol. You may not know about the history of the development of mifepristone. It was developed by Roussel Ukloff in the 1980s under the name RU-486 because it was the 38,486 drug that they ever developed. The purpose of the drug was to kill babies. That is the only use for which that product was designed. Roussel Ukloff was a spin-off from a company called Hoechst AG. Hoechst AG was one of the 3 companies that IG Farben was broken up into after World War II, and IG Farben developed Zyklon B for the Nazis as part of the Holocaust. We are in a a war right now. And you need to understand we are running out of time. There are only a few days for us remaining to pass Senate bills. Senate Bill 2880 will make a difference in the lives of Texans. It will save the lives of babies. And we have the power and we have the votes to pass that bill. And I understand we have the Republican votes on state affairs to pass the bill out. But until it is passed out of committee, we will not have a chance to pass this policy for Texans and save the lives of the unborn here in Texas. If that matters to us, now is the time. There is no other time to do this. We have to do it now. And with that, I will turn it over to my good friend, Representative Brent Money.
Thank you. Protecting the most innocent and vulnerable among us is the most important thing that we do. It's the most important role of government. And I want to reinforce everything that my friend Mitch Little said about SB 2880, which will save the lives of unborn children, and we need Ken King to call that up for a vote out of state affairs. But I also want to reinforce the need to protect innocent children from being sexualized in our state. SB 18, also by Brian Hughes, helps to end these perverted drag shows, drag queen story hours at our libraries. These are events that have occurred in many districts across Texas, and our constituents expect us to end them. We urge the Calendars Committee to protect children in this section and get SB 18 to the floor quickly. Also, SB 1396 by Senator Bob Hall was also voted out of the Public Education Committee and would further protect Texas children from harmful sex education curriculum. It will be up to the Calendars Committee to get that to the House floor as well and let the House vote on it. It has the votes to pass. And now I'd like to invite Andy Hopper up to talk about additional conservative policies.
I want to join my colleagues in supporting SB 2880, which over 40 Republican lawmakers signed a letter in support of just yesterday. It's my sincere hope that Chairman King will stop standing in the way of pro-life Texans and their efforts to defend the unborn. I also want to talk about SB 1065, a bill by Bob Hall, which protects the rights of gun owners in publicly owned spaces. Many Texans were shocked to learn that the State Fair of Texas was implementing and enforcing a gun ban on public property, even in the light of opposition of Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton. I am urging the Calendars Committee to support Texas gun owners and move this bill to the floor. SB 16 remains in calendars and will require proof of citizenship to vote, while SB 315 by Lois Kolkhorst will give Texans rights to their DNA. These would be some very strong wins to finish off this session. And I would like to, at this point, invite my friend Nate Chastline to come up and speak a bit.
Hey, thank you again for being here. And I want to just reiterate, look, SB 2880, if we can't pass a bill to protect the most innocent Texans, then what are we here for in the Republican-led legislature? I want to thank each and every one of my colleagues for standing with us, working every single day this session to strengthen so many Republican bills that have come to the floor. As we debate several very important policies over the weekend, Republicans will have an opportunity to make each bill as strong as possible. And if we vote together, we believe that Republicans will end this session more united, having accomplished more of what our voters sent us here to do. And our commitment to you is that we're going to fight to make each bill as strong as possible before sending it back over to the conservative Texas Senate. And finally, and I think this is important to say as we close this, if Chairman King kills a bill that would protect tens of thousands of innocent children from the murder that is abortion, Republicans will be forced to hold him accountable. Thank you to my colleagues, and thank you guys for being here today. As a result of us moving quickly to the floor and getting things done today, we won't be taking questions, but thank you so much for being here.
Be sure to subscribe to Texas Scorecard on YouTube and click that bell to ensure you're a real Texan. If you liked this video and want to see more citizen-driven journalism, be sure to click like and go to texasscorecard.com to read about all things Texas. Texas Scorecard, real news for real Texans.